it was probably 1986, maybe 1987, that I discovered Wizards from 1977. I remember catching a bit of it it was either on HBO or Cinemax. And I grew up with this kid, Scott, that at the time, he was the illustrator. Just an absolute natural. But he gave it up, and that's how those stories go. But we were kind of contemporaries and friends at the time. Maybe even best friends. And I remember talking to him, and we both of us caught a little bit of this Wizards thing on cable. We just remember it being like bloody, and there was a girl with boobs, but it was dark and cool. It was just cool. And then I went to a local VHS store, and then here we go. Welcome to Saturday and Sunday animation. We're talking cartoons. We talk cartoons on the weekend. So let's get into it.
Quiet on the set.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take 1.
Action!
AKAPAD. Did you know the best way to support everything you see the AKAPAD Army do, the AKAPADers, is to give a like, give a star, give a comment. However this episode is reaching you, let me know you're there. I'll do my very best to respond. I do read all comments, though. I try and bounce them back as quickly as I can. To further that, you can hit akapad.com, where you see themes and hubs and, maybe coming soon, creative services that I will sell you. Because I'm a creator. If you have a project, I want to work with you. So speaking of projects, I'm a obsessive film buff. Not only do I like to watch movies, but I like to talk about them. I like to research them, and I like to bring them to you. And in today's case, this is what makes part of this podcast effort so unique, is this movie. It's personal experience first. It's when I discovered this, and by discovering Wizards, and soon around this time discovering Heavy Metal, the animated anthology, my young mind matured into what the reach of a form is. Animation is a form. We can go adult. We can make this thing gruesome and bloody and wild. We can go all the way. Wizards and Heavy Metal are deeply influential to me. Part of my connection with Wizard was bonding with a neighborhood kid named Scott. I grew up with 2 Scotts, by the way. I currently have 1 Scott in my life. It's the name has it's almost like the name of a generation. Yeah, a lot of kids named Scott. So I hit that VHS shop. It was one of the off-center, because like back in the day, if you really want to go back, if you were in, let's just say like a 30-minute driving distance, you would be a member of every single one of those video shops. We had about 3 before the Blockbusters and the Hollywood Videos took over. But we had about 3. And the furthest one, which was around the location of where I had soccer practice, was also next to a banging ice cream place. They had it. So I go to the VHS shop, I rent Wizards, I bring it home, and I call Scott, and I said, I got Wizards. So I watch it. I'm so excited. He couldn't come over that night. Maybe waited the next day. So he comes over and we watch it. And then at that point, this was a perennial like rental. We just always rent this, always watch it. Heavy Metal, not available at all, even though I had seen that on Cinemax around the same time I had seen Clockwork Orange. Talking about mind blown there. And then I never let this go. So the DVD and the VHS era comes. Like, Scott basically moves on with life. He just does other things. I always felt like I was obligated to stay true to some of these roots, even though I'm highly critical of geek culture and a lot of the stuff that's come out of it. That's why we do this podcast. We rebel against film criticism purposely on this podcast because it's just not there. So I eventually owned Wizards through Suncoast Video. That was really the only place to buy videos until we got a local Best Buy. Because back then, VHS shops didn't sell their unused tapes. They didn't sell their inventory. Blockbuster later did that. Hollywood Video later did that. But you would have to special order if things weren't on the shelf. So Wizards becomes this like perennial occupier of my VHS player. And then I went through a additional cycle of Wizards, Heavy Metal, Transformers the movie, and Disney's Aladdin. It was like this loop. Sky and I also discovered Transformers the movie together, where on the school bus he told me there was cursing in it. And I said, like, that's crazy. So I was also able to rent that, and we sat down and watched that. Maybe had that playing for a week in his parents' living room. And we would invite people over to watch Autobots get killed. It was crazy. Wizards is a story of two brothers in a post-apocalyptic, magically driven. It's almost like a dystopian Harry Potter, but magic has taken over the world. Technology is somewhat banned and outlawed. We have one brother for magic. Magic represents life and freedom. There's characters that occupy that alone. Very aloof characters because that's magic, I guess, right? And then we have the technology side, the other brother. And this other brother is just for destruction. He has footage of Adolf Hitler. He shows this to his army. His army gets inspired and all hell breaks loose. This has a WW2 feel. It's a WW2, I would say, like a 1942 future, dystopian future. Like, it's insane. Like, just describing this. Mike Plog from Marvel Comics, from the Underground fame, he is somewhat of a collaborator. He collaborated with Bakshi for Lord of the Rings, but Bakshi and Bakshi and Co. really solidified themselves as a prominent animation force with this movie. Overall, Bakshi is, we have Don Bluth as maybe the greatest animation director of all time. Bakshi is like the greatest animation creator of all time. I often say his American Pop is a top 2, top 3 animated film ever. But Wizards is how I discovered Bakshi. I prefer Heavy Traffic, Coonskin, American Pop over Wizards at this point in my life. When I watch Wizards now, you know, I'm a little. It seems a little slow. It seems a little tchotchke at times, but I do watch this movie often still because it just brings me back to a time where getting inspired was so freaking simple. You just sit down and get inspired. Upon watching Wizards, I wanted to continue the story. I just always wanted to know what happens before and after this movie. Thank God no one's done it. I feel like they would, right? No one has done it. Mike Plog, who I mentioned before, he collaborates with Ralph Bakshi for the Lord of the Rings animated movies. He's the one that designs the ring wreaths. Incredible. So we have like a real illustrative quality to the character designs. According to Wikipedia, this film cost $2 million. It made $9 million. Everything in the geek world and geek culture now deconstructs. Everything's deconstruction, right? And because of that, we have endless continuations now. Like, everything is getting a sequel. I mean, the one outlier might be no Back to the Future 4. But everything it just gets extended now. Everything's mined, every rock. I mean, Dark Crystal, when Netflix was really trying to build a name for original content, Netflix went to Dark Crystal for a 10-episode series. And people were crazy, ecstatic, excited for that. It didn't quite land for a reason, which is insane. But you thought the audience was theirs. And sometimes it's not with what you do with a continuation or a backstory. I would have thought by now Wizards got that treatment, but it never did. And that's almost why it's special. I think to understand, part of my contention is to really understand the arc of American animation and to know that this was made right budding up into the 80s. And then we had the rise of Japanese animation, basically late 80s going into the mid 90s, like the peak era. If we were to maybe do a bell curve, Wizards is solidified in animation history. And there's more to do with this movie as of a discussion. There's other individuals who are involved with the movie poster that's now classic and endlessly homaged. There's Ron Baudet. There's a creation called Cobalt 60 that I coincidentally also discovered around this time because my buddy Scott got Cobalt 60 as a birthday present because he liked comics, and one of his relatives saw that in like Walden books. Equally bloody, violent, boobies, mind-blowing for a young kid at the time. You know, we're talking no internet here. There's so many influences. There's not much analysis about this movie, so maybe we'll do like future episodes where we kind of dig around Wizards. Because I feel like I should. I feel like I should really document how and why this is impactful and get into the guts of the production. Maybe get into some of the things Ralph Bakshi has said, but a lot of what we do here on this podcast is let's bring you the good stuff. Let's bring you the movies. Let's bring you some of the conversations and things to watch. I believe this movie right now is $10 available on digital from Amazon Prime. I have it so well memorized, I never bought it. Maybe I'll buy it after this. And sometimes it goes down to as low as $5. So maybe you can do that this weekend, AKAPADers. Rock and roll.
Okay, that's a wrap.